just want to have our panelists introduce themselves, a little bit about what they do these days.
So, hey everyone, my name is Bofan and I work as an executive producer at ReelShort.
Hi everyone, I'm Roxy Jen. I'm the head of post-production at ReelShort. My name is Mia Watanabe Miller. I am an independent producer, AD, and I've also done casting directing for verticals.
I'm Kevin Keeling. I am an independent assistant director and producer, and most recently DIT on vertical projects.
We're going to kind of take it through development all the way to post-production. And I really want this to be more of a roundtable conversation. So if you have questions that come up when you're hearing our speakers talk about something, go ahead and drop them in the chat and I will throw those in there as we can. Bofan, you're an executive producer with ReelShorts. You deal a lot with development and starting with writers and how you get your stories. What do you take into consideration when choosing or developing a script for vertical formats?
So our is a little different, but first of all script delivered to producers are already there. So for producers, what we do is the so-called second creation. For example, we know certain business model for vertical shows, and we know because everything's based on algorithm. It then makes sense to you, including casting, plot line, and you're gonna re-edit the show into marketing clips into 3 minutes and up to half an hour. And so when producers do those second creation development with the script delivered in their hand, we follow the so-called business model process and how we usually do it. But I would say producers are not very highly involved in development and vertical productions usually. But we do attend meetings and have discussions with the writers and give out creative inputs.
That's awesome. So do you feel like it being vertical in and of itself affects the structure of the scripts and how you're kind of talking with the writers in the second development phase?
Yes. When it comes to second creation, it usually means those plot lines will go to run as will have a potential, producers think will have a potential, drive online traffic while running ads. So when we do that, we usually refer to previous shows and see what's the formula in there. And also we see basically our guidelines in the company changes every 3 months. Not 3 months certainly, but it's we change as the market changes. So we'll have to do our own research too. So for example, there's another thriller show that I was producing, and there's no not really much thriller references for marketing clips in vertical industry yet. So we have to do a little bit of research and see. And we found out stalking actually was the top trending in searching and on TikTok. So that's kind of how we start our second creation. We create some stalking POVs in shots. And yeah, that's basically it.
Interesting. So you're really trying to find your target audience before you even decide which projects you're going to go ahead with.
Yeah. So when getting one script, we usually just, set tones and see what genre it is. And then based on this genre and the previous show's, performances, we start digging in.
It's really cool. So who do you think your target audience actually right now is? And who do you maybe see being in the future? What can filmmakers do to kind of jump on this bandwagon and kind of, I think it's very rare that we get to be at the forefront of a new type of content and strategy. So what can people do to kind of figure that out for themselves?
I would say audiences probably range from 17 to 45-year-old, generally speaking, for vertical shows.
Are you finding?
Sorry. Yeah, I just want to add up for different genres, we have different a target audience. We have shows that especially targeting male audiences, and we have shows that especially targeting for young adults. We call it YA shows, and soap operas, romantic story targeting for women. So it's a little different when it comes to different shows.
I'll chime in a little bit on that about target audience. Is that what I've noticed and what I really enjoy about the vertical sphere, especially as a vertical producer, is that it's primarily, I've noticed, targeted towards women. And as a woman, we haven't had a lot of media targeted aimed for us. It's usually for men. And so it's really great to see that as a new medium here being focuses mainly towards women. And that's what makes it sort of different.
And just really quickly, I'm going to define what we mean by vertical format. So that's anything shot specifically in 9:16 for 9:16 viewing. So that's going to be mostly in apps for consumption on your mobile phones. That's what we mean by vertical format. So Roxy, do you find that as a post supervisor that you're involved in the pre-production and knowing where those hooks are going to be and where your editors need to focus on the scripts?
Definitely, because I think, especially for our vertical industry, we take post-production process very seriously. I'm not sure about other companies, but for our companies, we actually highly involve our post-production team during production process or even pre-prep process. So, for example, when we're getting, just as Bofan just mentioned, we got the script and then, the whole production team to have meetings with the writers and, have with the directors, the producers, and also we're going to have our editors involved. So we're going to have the sync up meeting for everyone, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. The tone is set there. Everyone understands if it's which genre it is. For example, if it's a thriller or if it's a romance. And basically, we're probably going to talk about the target audience during the meeting as well. So, for example, if we're making this more for female or for male audiences, and also I think our post production team they're very good at making the hooks, just as you said, because for vertical shows, it's especially it's about a minute and a half, or even not less than 2 minutes. So we have to constantly tracking audience attention. We have to make them purchase for the next episodes. So in post production, we have to constantly pushing up the tension for that's something that we're definitely focus a lot on. Yeah, it's something that I could add on based on Roxy's is because we work closely with each other all the time, and we usually, production wise, we film a lot of inserts with emotions. For example, smashing something on the ground, and for example, grab a bottle of water, and to present some kind of emotion. Everything is a little bit different with traditional filmmaking, and Roxy's team is very good at creating these. And this is something that a director didn't think of while directing. Then her team can create these for vertical shows to set up a sort of a cliffhanger in each episode.
And I'd like to chime in. As far as post-production goes, being in the DIT seat for this current show that I'm on definitely shows how involved the producing team can be throughout the process. We're tracking from script through dailies, what's being shot, which is something I haven't experienced in the independent traditional media that I've worked on. Yes, you'll have somebody who's offloading footage and compiling that. But on vertical shows, you're having somebody who's pretty much starting the editing process and seeing what's working and what's not working on set, which is more akin to something you would see in studio productions or in television. And that's something that I really admire about the vertical format is that it's innovating in certain ways and it's taking what works from traditional media.
I'd like to give a completely different perspective on the post thing because I recently produced a thing where we were working with a different company that wanted to handle all post-production in-house. So the client wanted us to do all pre-production and production and not touch post-production at all. And I found that really interesting. So there are cases where, we had a DIT on set who also does an assistant editor by this client we were working with. So he did an assembly edit on set, like Kevin was talking about. But after that, it was completely out of my hands as a producer. We sent it off to the client and the client edited and took care of all of post-production without any of our say. That was part of the contract that we signed. So
I love all those different perspectives of post for sure. It also shows really important how it is to think about post-production at the same time as pre-production. I think too, especially in independent filmmaking, we were just trying to get to production. And so we do everything to get the film shot and then kind of forget about post. I love how it's really important to think about where you're sending it, who your audience is, and where your beats are going to be for your So let's jump into pre-production, production. So we've got locked script. We know who our target audience is. How do you start approaching budgeting for vertical project? And do you find any differences in that to, let's say, indie feature film?
From my perspective, but for me, it can change. So I think producing a vertical show, I would say like producing a vertical show has no difference with producing an independent feature film. So, but producer, at least at Real, we're functioning more as a showrunner. So we not only need to, know how to solve problems and handle all the logistics, budgeting, scheduling. So that's the basic skills for producers at ReelShort. But most importantly, what distinguishes you in the market is the business model that you can understand in vertical industry, because treating more as an internet product rather than, like filmmaking. So this is a very different industry. And way of storytelling is very different. But from a live producing perspective, it's pretty similar to, like producing an indie film.
Yeah, I'll hop in about this. I'd actually address that question in the chat about distribution, because that's honestly what we think of before we start working on budgeting, right? Because I know that ReelShorts, you have your in-house system with Crazy Maple Studios, and I've worked with a lot of different apps that work where it will contact the client usually in China, Korea, or Japan. They will work with a production companies located in America, and they will have the script. They will have everything normally. Like there's a couple of different ways to go with this, where you will have the production company. So you're like sort of like a subcontractor, right? And we'll work through everything, and then we'll give the client the finished program, but we don't have much creative say because the client will always have final say. We have to get even makeup looks approved by the client, and we won't have any script notes to give. But there is also other options. I've noticed recently there's some distribution deals where the American-based production company can either bring a script to these production companies, bring an entire concept, and that changes how everything is budgeted and financed, because usually clients will only finance the entire the entire budget if it's their entire script. And so if you want to bring in your own script, you have to finance either half to all of it, depending on your distribution deal. And I've seen that also happen in a couple of different cases with a couple of different companies. So after you figure out who's financing it, the client or you or a mix of it, I noticed that it's a very similar to budget everything to an independent feature, because we're not, even though things do get broken up into episodes at the end of the day, we're filming it like a movie. All the scenes are consecutive, We're not doing it like in TV where you have a different production number for each episode. So that changes it a little bit. The only different thing that I think of when I'm scheduling or budgeting for a vertical that's completely different from traditional narrative work is I think about where the paywalls are going to be. Because a lot of these scripts usually have the paywalls written into it. Usually after episode 10, there's like one paywall. And then depending on the company, there might be a second paywall, right? And so I think that I have to change my mindset where the goal of this project is to get people to pay for the first paywall to watch the rest of the show. And so the first, let's say 10 episodes have to be really, really good. So I will, if there's anything in those first 10 episodes that I think is interesting and important for the client, I will dedicate more time, money, and resources to that so we can get more people hooked into the show and get past that first paywall. Because the goal for me as a producer and working with production companies is to make sure that the production company can get another contract, because we're all doing freelance stuff here. It's not guaranteed. So how can we make sure that we get another contract? We make the company money by having a really, really good, solid first 10 episodes and people wanting to pay for that paywall.
I'll also say, as far as budget goes, the verticals, at least that I've worked on, are comparable to low budget independent features, like we've all said, but the schedule in making a vertical is very short. It'll usually be 1 to 2 weeks of prep. That includes your location scouts, breaking down your scripts, contracting crew and cast and all of that, at least from my experience, and then 2 weeks of shooting. It's a very quick turnaround from being pitched, at least on my end, being pitched a script and then shooting it. And that certainly cuts down your costs, but it makes it very like a soap opera, and you have to be quick on your feet and adapt to that on set.
Kevin, you just parlayed us awesomely into the next question I was going to ask anyways about timeline. But I also saw Roxy and Bofan share a look and smile when you said something. So do y'all have a comment about that, about timeline?
No. Yeah, I know for different companies in this industry, they give different timelines to, companies that provide production services. But for in-house productions, usually we take longer time off prep. But I know like if working with an outsourcing company, we do that too. So we have shorter range of prep time, but 1 to 2 weeks sound a little crazy to me.
It is. For me as a producer, I've worked with a couple of different clients, and it's usually on average 3 weeks total, even just as a producer. 3 weeks total prep.
So Kevin, as a line producer and a first AD, you're talking about that short timeline. What strategies do you really use during pre-production or production to like ensure you make your days?
Usually my focus is our location, because that's usually the most expensive thing that I'll deal with. So I try to put all of the location together. If there are 30 pages taking place at a single location, I'll try to break that into 2 to 3 days, depending on how long of a project it might be. And then dependent on that, okay, what cast do we need? What crew do we need for those days? And then I'll adapt the schedule from there. If it turns out we can only have that location for 2 days, I'll try to work with the production team to kind of figure out alternatives. Maybe a scene doesn't have to take place at that location. Maybe it's a conversation between two people. Maybe it can happen in one of the characters' cars or something else like that. And we can move that particular scene to another day, another location, and save us time shooting at like a bar or a hospital, something like that. Sometimes that doesn't always work. And as Mia has already talked about, those paywalls definitely impact how you're going to shoot. So usually earlier on, you're dedicating more time, resources, money to the earlier parts of the script. So I'll take that into account. I'll try to make those earlier parts of the script take place. I'll try to make them shorter so we can dedicate that time. And then as the script progresses and as the crew has gotten used to the pace of one another, I'll increase the page count, especially towards when we're going to break, because we'll have a 1 to 2 day break in the middle of shooting and then come back. And then when we come back, try to do a similar thing. Start us off with a lower page count, not as low as when we first started, but then ramp us up. I found that works the most effective. And by that time, the crew is really used to one another. The cast is used to what they have to provide to the director in order to make the scenes work. And that's usually the attitude I try to bring in.
Mia, do you have anything to share on that?
I'll go back in time to earlier this May. Kevin, I'm going to talk about Return of the Last Heirs here.
Sure.
So before May, I primarily worked in like pre-production and like casting for vertical. So I'd never been on a physical vertical set, right? And so Kevin called me to second AD for him for something we did for ReelShorts. And that really opened my eyes up to like the concept of like, okay, how do we schedule it? And how is scheduling so much different for this sort of medium versus traditional sort of narratives? And I think something that you said that really impacted me, which I think it was, if it's before the paywall, we'll do like 1 hour per page. If it's after the paywall, half an hour per page. And I was like, okay, I get it now. That's the moment when everything clicked for me for understanding how verticals work.
How do you find that you guys as producers and also maybe your crew balance creative expression with also the commercial demands of vertical content and just the schedules that y'all have to compete with?
I'll say a little something on that. My personal philosophy with film in general, just to put this out there, is that all film is on a spectrum of art to entertainment. There's no pure art, there's no pure entertainment, maybe, but it's sort of a spectrum, right? And I think that like we're all aware as crew when we're on set that verticals are more towards the entertainment than art. And we just are having fun with it. I feel like on set with vertical crews, we had the strongest bond. I've met some of the greatest people on verticals. And we all bond over the fact that like, yeah, this is entertainment. Sometimes we can't take ourselves too seriously, but all are enjoying the creation of this.
I think where verticals are now, and they're definitely leaning more towards that entertainment side of the spectrum, but I don't think it's without reason that you can have artistic verticals. It's just finding that place where it is right now. It's like when YouTube started or TikTok started or any of these new mediums started, there was getting the reach out there so people can be entertained and understand it. And then as it started to evolve and develop, you definitely had more auteurs and artists come in and present their vision versus, okay, what's something that's commercially viable?
Yeah, as someone that's had the opportunity to kind of like pitch some concepts or kind of talk back and forth on the creative side with your clients, Can you tell us about the importance of mood boards and lookbooks for approvals?
When it's a script and a concept that comes 100% from the client, which is pretty normal for these, like they have tons of creative say. They are the client. We want to make the client happy, right? Like any other field, not just film. And so we have to get everything approved by them, especially key crew members, our director. Like if I pick a director, it has to be someone usually with vertical experience because they want to know, like, can you ace this genre? Because it's a little different, right? And then all the key crew members usually have to create lookbook. So usually some sort of like deck or something, every single department that shows in depth. So if we go location scouting and we want to get client approval, we have to send a lookbook of every single location that matches up to every single location in the script and see if the client approves of it, because they have to say yes, or else we have to go back to the drawing board. We don't have final say on those sort of things. Like if it's a pure distribution contract, which is extremely rare, but it is happening. I'm actively involved with on right now where we have full creative say, then yeah, we don't have to send lookbooks for every single thing. Like for every single thing, I mean, like the makeup artist has to submit a lookbook, even if there is no intense makeup. If it's all like everyday makeup, she still has to submit every single actor, how she would do every single look to the client, which normally would happen anyways. So it would happen to the directors, but you're working with a client that's on a completely different time zone and getting it approved. And when there are cultural differences in between our American crew and the Asian client, that creates some sort of creative differences that we have to work through and figure out, where are they coming from and why do they want things to look a certain way? An example of that I've noticed recently was I was producing something and like the main character is a billionaire. Okay, that's normal. And so we're looking for a mansion for this billionaire. And coming from an American perspective, I was thinking, when I think of rich people, I think of like these old fancy European giant mansions, like the oil Mongols, those sort of moguls, like from the 1920s.
Like Castle or something.
Yes, I think of Hearst Castle. But after talking with the clients and talking more with our Chinese team, I was understanding, when they think of what a rich person's, a billionaire's house looks like, that is completely different from what they were thinking. They wanted something super high-end, modern, more like 70s and newer. I was like, okay. So we have a different understanding of old money versus new money. So it's like handling, and these lookbooks really do help get through any cultural differences we may have.
For a little bit of clarity, 3 weeks prep. And then since you're filming on average 10 episodes, like narrative film form, approximately how many minutes or hours of content is that on average? Does anyone think they could answer that question?
The scripts are on average like 90 to 110 pages. So
I was prepping one. It was the lowest that I was prepping, and that was 84 pages, but a 9-day shoot.
I would say ranging from 70 to 110. So depending on the page counts, we set certain days, but usually we film around 10 pages per day. I know for some other production company, they film up to, like 15 pages per day sometimes. And we film with 2 cameras. We film vertically, and the output is in vertical format too. While when transitioning to post, usually we just follow the script instruction and we break the, like let's say 100 minutes total running time movie into, episodic content, which is like 1 to 2 minutes per episode, sometimes like 2 minutes and a half, which is very rare. Yeah, that's pretty much.
Cool. Perfect segue. So Roxy, does the post timeline also for vertical films, does that vary? We know production's a little bit shorter for some companies. Do you find that your editing time is also cut short?
Even though it's a very fast-paced industry, but the content in total, it would be around 100 minutes. So it's definitely a feature-length project for each show. So, but for us, I think because of the nature of this industry, of course, our post-production process would be very tight. So I'm not going to say how long exactly, because it's going to be like case by case. But in general, our editing process would be like about a month-ish, I would say, in general. So after that, we're going to push to, but we have like multiple editors working on the same project. And then we're going to move on to the color grading and also sound designing process. But since the audience are using phones to watch the contents, so imagine that it's not in a AR living room or in the theater, right? We have like high bus on, like sharp or like very high quality, like sound designing, or like we need the color to be like in a certain tone or like in a certain like stylish way. So I think for our standard would be like dialogue needs to sound clear and no like significant or like obvious like noises, background noises.
and also like the volume of the sound effects and the music and also the dialogue sounds like balanced. And well, for the color, it will be, the audience can see clearly on the actors' emotion, their faces, and their different like lighting situations. So like, for example, like sometimes we use our phone exterior, right? Or sometimes we watch inside of like a dark room or something. So we have to have the colorists like, them to sort of making people's or like actors' face look as clear in different sort of circumstances. So I guess in that case, we do have a shorter time period for colorists and designers who work on their portion. And after that, it's basically just like, QC and exporting. Yep.
Yeah, so like what I'm hearing is like y'all really do a lot of, you focus on the edit and then do mostly just clean up with the sound design and the color. Because since it's going through phones and just, someone's going to think the most surround sound will be their AirPods. You're not going to go as far as, do Dolby Vision or anything like that. Can you discuss a little bit more about the role of hooks when you're editing and kind of how y'all take those into account for your episodes?
I think in traditional narratives, I'm not talking about like super like artistic, those kind of film. I'm talking about more of a traditional storytelling way. So basically we're following the format of like 3 acts, like 5 acts, but it's all under a time amount of like 100 minutes to like 120 minutes-ish. But for our project, since we're constantly making the hook, so basically it's where we have to create, a roller coaster ride for the audience in each episode. So I think that's what we're aiming for when we're editing. So for example, we have to like, for our editors, we have to catch the most like dramatic or like the most scenes that have the strongest emotion. We have to like maximize them either by, using different coverage or by extending or a certain moment to emphasize the anger or the romance, the love, different kind of like each scenes. So that's something that we're like working on.
Yeah, I guess what Roxy's trying to say is, like vertical is all about emotions. Like emotions are core of all the storytelling verticals. Like we have, different genres, like tearjerker type, like a romantic type, or we have sometimes, like emotional peaks type, or like those different plot lines that will go on as. And so from development to production to post-productions, and really mark that sort of emotions and, set the tone for plot lines and make sure that everyone's on the same page and from development to post-production. Also in marketing too.
The concept of hooks in verticals, it goes all the way to pre-production. We all have to think about it when we are all the way in pre-production, all the way to post-production. You could think about it like if you look at vertical scripts, the episode breaks are written into the scripts. So where those moments of high intense emotions need to be in pre-production so you can help the editor so they don't have to find those moments. You can give them those moments in post.
I want to jump off of that, especially off of what was said before in that you're not watching this content on television or in a theater. And as a result, I think the emotion behind the acting changes a little bit too. When you have a project projected on 100, 200 inch screen, you're able to see a bit more of the micro expressions that an actor might give. Whereas in vertical content, it almost is a bit more like theater where you have to tone it up a bit more because people are going to be watching it on their phones. So that emotion is a little bit easier to read because people are putting more energy into it when we're filming. I would say it's more obvious as opposed to like the micro expressions that you might see in traditional media.
So what I'm really hearing is like, well, one thing, Roxy, I love the fact that you as an editor and your team are really looking for those emotional beats and stuff to cut around versus just, all right, here's the script, here's the shots that I got. I'm just going to lay it out. I think that's really important. And I see that a lot where people are just like cutting to the action versus like where you want your audience to actually go and what you want them to feel. And also as a note kind of to writers, if there's any writers in here right now, to when they're writing these scripts of things that they think they might want to eventually try to maybe sell to a production company to be distributed through a vertical format, is of where your hooks are going to be and like how you're going to write your episodes in. Are you editing these all as one film and then cutting them up, or do you edit them just as 2-minute beats?
We are definitely following the script because, we have a very strict time frame for each episode. So as everyone just mentioned, it's about like 1 minute to 2 minutes content, right?
So constantly we have to create the hook, which means that if we cut the feature lengths all at once, and then we cut them into like different episodes, we break them afterwards, then I think we're missing a lot of stuff. And we have to like come back and then, recreate those clips. So what we're doing in a more effective or like a more efficient way is definitely we're going to follow the script. Because, during script writing or like during the development process, they've already, like the production team and the script writers, they already made the hooks. They highlight them in the script. So for our editors, we're definitely following that as a reference.
How can a person that worked in reality television transition to vertical format? I personally think having worked in independent film where we're shooting like films in 6 days and stuff like that, which I think kind of comes into the same realm of vertical sometimes. I find that people that have worked in reality television actually do really well in those situations because they're used to that fast pace. Where's the action and what can I do about it? How do you guys feel about that?
I'll say a little something about that. Like, I feel like any other part of the film industry, it's all about who you know. But also let's keep in mind that pretty much all vertical projects are non-union. So as long as it doesn't violate any union contracts that somebody is signed to, keep an eye on Facebook. A lot of people, we constantly are looking through Facebook and there's quick turnarounds looking for crew constantly through Facebook. Keep an eye through there if you really want to try to get into it. And hopefully someone will be able to take a chance on you.
Yeah.
The same way someone did for all of us.
As someone who has done some reality TV, it's definitely the same type of pace. You're moving pretty quickly throughout the day, especially because on some of these, you're able to do 8 pages in a day and have a little bit more wiggle room. But more often than not, you're doing 10 plus pages in a day. It's one of the reasons I like working with ReelShorts is that they give us that 10-day window to do an entire script versus some of the other vertical companies out there who might try to do the same length of script in as little as 6 to 7 days.
I would say, I remember like ReelShort just announced that we're going to do a vertical reality show, like put a lot of influencers in one house and, like this sort of type. But I would say I hire recent graduates all the time and passionate students who wants to be on board, just learn stuff. We are very open to that, and also Roxy too, I think. So one good thing about vertical industry is it's growing really fast and it's very new and everything is open to everyone. So in my team, personally speaking, I don't mind, like if you work on a TV show or, like reality show, as long as you love this industry, you respect people, you're humble and nice, you're more than welcome to join us.
I'll add one more thing. And if you were to compare this to anything in traditional media, I would say verticals are kind of filling that space that the WB and the CW once filled, where you were bringing on people who they had experience in the film industry. They are recent graduates, like you were saying, and they are looking to get their foot in the door and build up their resume and figure out where they want to be in the industry. And that's something that the WB, CW used to do, especially with writers and crew. And as that kind of fell away and that part of the industry kind of got cannibalized, I think verticals are filling that niche, at least as far as I can see.
As someone who got their career started on a CW show, I 100% agree with that.
What kind of roles do you look for? So like I'm a director, shooter, editor. From what I understood, you handle post-production differently, but are you looking for directors or cinematographers or both for your shows?
We hire crews all the time, like from director to, like every production crew on set and also every role in post-production. Like right now I have 4 production crews that can rotate and take over my in-house productions. And those people have filmed, like at least more than 4 vertical shows for me and up to, 15, 20 shows even. Like these people are definitely one of the best in this industry. And most of them are like trained from scratch. Like they haven't stepped into vertical industry at all. And we work together and they love doing it. We love working with them. So we kept working together. And basically, I can just fill their calendar year up if they want to do this.
And what kind of cameras do you shoot on out of curiosity?
So for my productions, because we've done like too many shows already, like more than 100 shows. So we summarize best approaches for vertical production. So camera-wise, I personally would prefer to use FX3 for both. And so we've done like all the camera that you can imagine in this industry already. But I filmed on entirely on iPhones too. Like I just wrapped a show earlier a few months ago, and everything is filmed entirely on iPhone, and you can't even tell the difference between, like usually, common audience they wouldn't even tell the image quality between like the professional camera and the phone. So the approach was to involve everyone to create drama and upload your videos and be a storyteller. And you don't have to film on a professional camera as long as you know how to film with your iPhone, so you know how to edit, then you can make your own story.
I would say that's slightly different when you're working as an outsourced company because we have to get everything with client approval. So it is harder to get people no vertical experience into a production that is being run by an outsourced company.
As far as cameras go, I've only seen the Sony lines on the projects that I've worked. And then you might have a C camera because we shoot on 2 cameras. So A and B are usually the same brand just to make color profiles and posts a little easier. And then your C cam might be an iPhone if it's like a high angle security cam footage, stuff like that. Or if you have something like maybe in a car or in a pool or something like that, like a GoPro or an action camera just for specialty shots.
You said you guys are strictly ruled by algorithms. It's all about what's trending now and what people are going to latch onto. If you are a indie vertical filmmaker and you're trying to pitch to a reel, is that what you guys are being, kind of using as your metric for potential success? Is it algorithms as well, or are you guys more with the vision? And you mentioned that people are coming with visions now versus, is that being received, or is it still mostly about what's going to move the needle?
I wouldn't say that we strictly follow the algorithm because everything is written by human in-house writers. It's just like we learn from the algorithms. Like, for example, Crazy Maple, before they launched ReelShort app, they were doing mobile phone games. So those mobile games are the kind of games I will see on Instagram, Facebook. Like, I'm the queen, now make my choice, abandon this girl or, save her. Or it's a cold winter day and you have to shower her, this little girl, and put on the manicure, hair and makeup, and go on a date and give her a successful life. And not specifically ReelShort, but like people who run those ads found out that if you change the manicure color from blue to red, it will actually drive more online traffic, if that makes sense. So just based on those data performances, that you will know what type of audiences will love what type of content. So it's just the safer way to play the game. And I would say ReelShort, we also accept pitches from, independent filmmakers all the time. So what really matters is the quality of the story. And if it really suits the business model of vertical industry.
Add on to that, just get on TikTok, see what's trending, because what's trending in verticals usually, I've noticed, just my own personal opinion, it tends to line up with what's trending on TikTok, especially like with the book talk communities and communities on TikTok that read books. That was explaining.
Yeah, just giving a bad example, that's why I don't know if you ever come across any ads on, for vertical stories. It's always sometimes slap on your face or, split the water to your body. And data right now find out that vertical audience, they are not, only satisfied to 1 slap, probably sometimes 3 slaps, this is all algorithm. So I'm not saying that this is 100% true, but we learn from those.
Yeah, and also it's constantly changing.
Yeah, it's changing all the time.
Because, once people find out that 1 slap, slapping people with driving traffic, that I think a lot of productions are making those, putting those elements in there. But, probably audience may get tired, right? It's too violent or something. And then in a certain way, they would choose that, I think it's too violent. I want something to be more gentle. The market changes, our strategy changes as well. So, yeah, that's what always following the whole trend in the market.
And do you feel it's changing as fast as things are trending on social media? Is this that immediate of a change?
So we change as the markets change.
My big insightful thought for everybody is just make your film. Don't let anyone tell you no. Get out there, make it on an iPhone, make it on a GoPro, make it on a Sony Handycam. It doesn't matter. Put it out there. My biggest tip, and I say this to myself all the time, don't let what you see on social media stop you from creating your art.